Hey Management 4480, welcome to your next class. So last class we were talking about chapter 7 and international strategy, and today we're moving into chapter 8, which is about entrepreneurial strategy. So I have my notes here from the PowerPoint I made for you, and I just wanted to quickly review the information on there. So it starts off by defining what entrepreneurship is. And entrepreneurship, according to your textbook, is the the creation of value and the assumption of risk. The creation of value and the assumption of risk. And when we think of entrepreneurship, I think our default is the startup company with the entrepreneur working out of the office in his house or in his garage or her garage. And that is one manifestation of entrepreneurship. But there are plenty of ways that entrepreneurship plays out in the real world. So we see entrepreneurship in those startup ventures with the girl in her garage, but we also see entrepreneurship happening in large companies. A lot of times large companies call it intrapreneurship. We see entrepreneurship happening in family-owned businesses. So even if someone has a business passed down to them from a parent, that person, even though the business was handed to him or her, is still considered an entrepreneur. And we also see entrepreneurship within nonprofits. And it's basically just the extent to which we're creating new value in whatever context that is, whether it's an established company or a brand new company, and assuming some risk. And so we've already talked about in previous chapters how we might have certain groups within a company focus specifically on coming up with new ideas or new products, new services for the organization. And so this whole creating something new, creating value through something new, is what entrepreneurship is. So in the PowerPoint, you'll see a diagram about the entrepreneurial opportunity analysis. And it essentially is telling us 3 resources, attributes that are necessary for entrepreneurial activity to occur. And so the first piece of it, the first thing that we need in order to successfully pursue some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor is an opportunity. So we need to identify an opportunity and evaluate that opportunity. And then the next thing you need is the or several entrepreneurs. And so you can identify an opportunity. I think a lot of us have thought of things that we would say, okay, that's actually a good idea. I'm surprised nobody's done that yet. I should do that, but we haven't done it. And so you need an entrepreneur who's actually going to see the opportunity and do something about it. But then the third piece is that you need an entrepreneur who has access to resources. And so without resources, you're pretty limited in what you can do, even if you're willing to do it. So what kind of resources would an entrepreneur need? Well, obviously financial resources. We would also need human capital, so our own skills and ability, as well as the skills and abilities of our employees, or even if we don't have full-time or part-time employees, we'll probably be outsourcing some of our activities to other firms or other individuals at some point. We need social capital, which is so important for entrepreneurs. Those relationships really help entrepreneurs get the information they need. There's so much tacit knowledge out there that we won't know until somebody is nice enough to share it with us. And then government resources have also proven to be really invaluable with someone who's trying to start and grow a business. So more on those financial resources. A lot of entrepreneurs, the majority, rely on their own savings or help from family and friends first and foremost before they get money from anybody else. Before there's any sort of bank loan, before there's any other outside investor, they're usually drawn on their own savings accounts. And then you also are starting to see more people do crowdfunding, where they're sending out a link where you can donate as they try to launch a business. Sometimes we hear people getting funding from angel investors, and sometimes we hear people getting funding from venture capitalists. What's the difference between angel investors and venture capitalists? So angel investors typically are individuals who will invest up to 6 figures of money into a business very early on in the business. Venture capital is usually in the 7 figures or higher, and it's usually like a firm with pooled money, and they invest these funds into the business after the company has proven itself to some extent. So, it's difficult to get venture capital if you just have a great idea, or if you're in the very, very early stages where you've not really done much of the work or sold much. Venture capitalists are intrigued when there's a track record. So researchers have looked into the personality traits of entrepreneurs, and based on the big 5 personality traits, they found that entrepreneurs typically have higher self-confidence, higher conscientiousness, are more open to new experiences, and are more emotionally stable, but they're lower in agreeableness, which I think is really interesting. And if you think about it, it probably makes sense. It's probably not somebody who goes along with the status quo. It's probably somebody who's an independent thinker. So in this chapter, we also learn about different entrepreneurial entry strategies. And so the 3 common entry strategies are pioneering new entry, imitative new entry, and adaptive new entry. So a pioneering new entry is exactly what it sounds like. It's finding a solution to a problem in a brand new way. It is a disruptive innovation, and it's something that people never imagined. And so in here, the example I use is the personal computer. So previously in the mid 20th century, companies would use these huge mainframes as their corporate computers, but the idea of having a computer in a person's household was unheard of until it happened. And so second, you have the imitative entry strategy. And so this is when you're taking a product or service that already exists in one market and you're just going to introduce it to another market. And so you're not coming up with anything that's brand new. It's just sort of reframing it so that it will appeal to another group that currently doesn't buy the product or service. So the example I have in the PowerPoint is called the nightcap. And so this is basically a scarf that women wear to sleep at night. And it is nothing new. The nightcap came out in 2019, and women have been wearing headscarves to bed for generations, hundreds of years. So, and so not only was this entrepreneur able to successfully introduce a very old product to a new segment, but she's able to charge like 10 times what the consumers in another segment who do already buy scarves for bed, what they would be paying. So, I mean, this entrepreneur is doing something right. And then you have the adaptive new entry strategy, which is also taking something that already exists, but you're remixing it in such a way that it feels sufficiently different. So the example product that I put in the PowerPoint is crystal deodorant. So people have been using deodorant for hundreds of years, since the 1800s. And then Crystal came out in 1980 and said, you know, we're going to make a deodorant, but it's going to be all natural. So that was sufficiently different. So we're taking a product that already exists, everybody's been using it, but now we're going to create a new audience for the people who want deodorant and they want that fragrance protection, that sweat protection, but we're going to just make it all natural. And so they sort of spearheaded the whole natural deodorant movement. So for today's activity, I want you to think about a business that you would start as an entrepreneur and what your entry strategy would look like. So in the PowerPoint, I include a video of a young man who did a presentation in front of the sharks in Shark Tank. And he came up with his own idea for a bow tie business. And so if you were going on Shark Tank, what business would you present to the sharks? And based on your idea, would you call it pioneering? Would it be imitative? Would it be adaptive? You decide. And so you will upload your information on Moodle to get credit for the activity. All right, so that's it for today's class. I'll see you next time.